Okay.
Okay, thank you everyone. It's tonight it's our pleasure to have a Heidi Frail, the select board candidate for the upcoming town selection in Needham. And we like to invite her to share some of her ideas, like her experiences, her future plan going forward, and see how we can collaborate together with the Chinese Friends of Needham here. Heidi, nice to have you here. Would you mind to start with a brief intro of yourself?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. It's so nice to meet you, Dennis. And I'm looking forward to meeting members of the community. My name is Heidi Frail, and I am the candidate for select board for this April 12th town election. I am a resident of Needham. I've been here for about 18 years, and I have two boys, one of whom is now in college. He's a sophomore at Northeastern, and one is a junior at the high school. And I work locally as well. I'm an X-ray tech specializing in pain management at Newton Wellesley. I actually work over on Wells Avenue, a little closer even than Newton Wellesley Hospital. And I've been involved in town for a while now. I have been working with the League of Women Voters for a number of years, and I was on their board for over 4 years. I'm sorry, I'm admitting people as I'm speaking. I also am a 2-term town meeting member. So I've been working with the town in their processes, and through the League of Women Voters, I'm also working, I worked with the town to help people understand the town meeting warrant. So I was part of the warrant room committee, and we helped to explain all of the town processes and the articles that would be coming up at town meeting to the town meeting members. So I became very familiar with how the town works. I'm also an elected member of the Democratic Town Committee, and do various activities with that group as well, including being a state delegate or a delegate to the state convention a number of years running, 4 years running, I think. And so I'm ready to take on a bigger challenge now, and interested in working to help set policies that I believe in and that are inclusive, that facilitate diversity. And so that's what I'm looking forward to doing.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for sharing that experience. Actually, I think when you mentioned about it's a League of Women Voters, is it right? Well, I found this organization has done a lot of community work in encouraging women to step up in the town management overall and in general. So would you be able to tell me a little bit of experience when you're working with them on the board? Is it like what's your typical regular workflows in terms of related to town or the community?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's a fantastic organization, and they take both men and women, even though it's a League of women voters.
Okay, you do. Okay.
So just
I
to be
thought
clear,
it's only for women voters.
No, just to be clear. But no, they're great. It's a grassroots. Well, it's a national organization. The local organization operates with a lot of discretion, and so what the group can do locally is decide kind of what issues they want to work on, or what issues they see in their town that they want to address. So the League does a lot of things: education, advocacy, voter education. Those are their primary goals. But they also do things like, for example, many years ago, maybe 4 or 5 now, when I was on the board, we were having a discussion about how it was very difficult for residents of the town to contact their town meeting members, because the town didn't provide email addresses, for example. So the only way to contact them was to actually go to their home or mail a letter to their home, and you had to have internet access and look up the information, and it was this whole big process. And we started a study about how we want communication to happen between our residents and our town officials. I mean, a town meeting member, while they don't practice very often, they're still an elected town official. And we felt that it would be more appropriate for them to be easily contacted. And so we put together a study looking at how people felt about that and what the town could and what solutions could possibly be provided. And we brought this to the town, and through the work of the league and also the town and the town information officer, town meeting members now are going to be provided with email addresses so that they can be contacted, making it sort of more of a real democracy. Like if you can't, if you're a representative government and your representatives can't be contacted, then to me, that's a real issue. So there are lots of different types of projects. Some are education. The league put on a play, brought in a group who did a play about different women in government and their influences. And there's a group that works with brownie troops to educate girls when they're quite young. There's a junior league of women voters at the high school who actually helped facilitated the forum that was held the other day. So there are lots of ways in which the league works locally and actually has a huge impact. They just did a review of elected and appointed boards, and actually submitted a report on their findings to the town. And the town is considering making some changes in the way we elect or don't elect certain positions to facilitate efficient government. So they really do have a big impact.
Yeah, I see. Thank you very much. I don't want to carry this carry this meeting away from the main topic today here. So thanks for sharing that experience. And based on that experience and your vision here in the town, like being an 18 years resident in Needham, what do you think if you are elected as a member? What kind of priorities or do you have in terms of work agenda for as a select board member?
There's a couple of immediate big ones that come to mind. One is that I think we need as a town to work on communication. We need to work on having like clear, calm, respectful communication, and making sure that everyone feels included and heard. And because communication is getting a little bit more difficult these days with with the local newspaper shutting down. So just making sure that we're using communication channels that everyone is paying attention to, or that we, the town, are using the correct communication channels, which basically means all of them. So that's important. I feel very, very strongly that we need to be addressing climate change, and we need to be doing that across the board. So pretty much, to me, that means every decision that comes across the select board desk, it needs to be made with an eye towards climate change. So whether that's sustainable building or what kind of funding we give to different projects, we need to start thinking about what the climate impacts are going to be and how this is going to affect people. The same thing, it's very important to me that we increase and diversify our housing stock, but that has to be done in a sustainable manner. We need to start thinking of 50 years into the future so that we create a good future for our kids and our kids' kids. So those are some of the things that are going to be very important to me to get started with.
I see. One of the things, like if I remember correctly, the town proposed a 17 million project to renovate one of the admin buildings for like the school staff, right? What's the name of that building?
Emery Grover.
Yeah. So that one, I think last year has been very controversial in terms of discussion. There's a huge discussion over that because like the $17 million are spent on total number of 40 staff, like admin staff, including bus drivers who are not working there at all. So on average, we spend like a 300 to 400K on average per staff in order to renovate that building. Right. So things like this. So what's your perspective on this?
Well, I hear what you're saying about Emmett Grover and the cost. I guess I looked into that a great deal. At the time that that decision was made, I was a town meeting member.
I
And
see.
although I initially was feeling, it sounds like the way you were feeling, which is just that this is like incredibly expensive and maybe not worth it. I did end up coming around, and here's why. It's true that when looked at it as like the school administration versus the schools, we would prefer to spend our money on the schools. But these two projects, first of all, don't come from the same funding source. So it is a little hard to understand how we could spend all this money. But one of the things that convinced me was the building that is on, I feel terrible that I'm forgetting the name of this other building. There's a building that the town owns. It's out where the community farm is. It used to be used for events and so on. And it was mothballed because we weren't using it, and it fell into disrepair, just as Emery Grover has fallen into disrepair. And we have actually spent quite a lot of money to have that building in disrepair. And now we are losing that building. We're actually spending more money to take it down. And unfortunately, Emery Grover has fallen into disrepair to the degree that it really needs to, we need to sort of fish or cut bait. Like we need to either fix it or get rid of it.
Yeah.
It wouldn't fetch that much on the open market. So selling it, it's a historic building, which personally doesn't speak to me all that much. But I do feel that this is an asset that the town owns, and that to let it fall so much into disrepair for the sake of $17 million, when we could just repair it and have it be useful for the next 75 years, whether it's used as a school administration building or something else. So by spending this, in the grand scheme of things, relatively small amount of money, although clearly on a personal level, not so much, we preserve this asset for the town for the next 75 years, as opposed to having like a kind of a dump just sitting in the middle of town, benefiting no one. So ultimately, my decision was that we should spend this money, preserve the building, make it useful, and then decide what it was going to be used for. Currently, that'll be school administration, but who knows what the future is. The thing is, if we let it fall into disrepair and destroy it, we lose all potential options. So those are my feelings about it.
Right. I definitely think I definitely understand that this could be a tough choice in terms of dilemma. Like either you're going to save it, or you will spend a little and to save it for a few decades, or you going to just let it be, sit there. One of the things I think I think you probably can bring the idea to the board also, is one of the things is like when we find that compare with a neighboring town, like for example, Wellesley, right? Mm-hmm. So we found the facilities used for sports, for community. Most of them are residing in the schools, right? So like a basketball courts, volleyball courts, if you want to use any of this, you have to rent the space from the schools. But school itself is very busy. They have very tight schedules to make it available for residents. Although through park recreation, we do have space programs like throughout winter, but be honest, it's like we have a very compared with the Wellesley or Newton, we have a much fewer space in terms of for sports purpose, etc. So one thing is like if just preserving the building using 17 million, probably just adding maybe another 5 million, make some of the space becoming a sports related kind of space, so that it can be used to host events, activities indoors for kids or adults, both. And then we can take the pressure off the school buildings in general. That could be very, very helpful actually. So that's something probably we can, I don't know if this is the right channel for communication to bring that up, but definitely that's something like this is my experience. I think that's something we can definitely to improve it.
Okay, that's a really interesting idea. It's not something I know a ton about, so I would be interested.
Because one I think back then there's a discussion about this building renovation, and one of the arguments is like the whole space is remodeled just for the superintendent, right? So it's like the whole floor, something like that, just for.
Yeah, I mean, it's
like,
got a lot of space in
really?
it, but it's not. I mean, I hear what you're saying. There's like a conference room and stuff. Yeah.
I understand. It's a school building, but it's not available for. I mean, if that's a space, it should be better used. Just to bring this up. Okay, cool. So one more thing. I think we have more people to join here. So if you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat, and then we can probably go through that once we cover the major topics here. Like the pre-screening questions I sent to Heidi. But if you have any questions, feel free to bring it up. Maybe we can move on to the next one.
Sure.
Yeah. So okay. So the other one is like I think this is sort of also related to the school system in the town. Is so I think because right now we have 5 elementary schools in the town, right? But the number of students keep going up, and I see I see there's a ad to ask for more teaching staff at elementary schools, etc. But in the meantime, with the High Rock, Polar, Needham High, sort of a space is limited, right? So going forward is like as a select board member. What do you think you can work with the school committee to address the increasing numbers of students in Needham overall?
Well, so I think this is a really complicated question. The school committee has put together this very comprehensive plan to talk about how to address the school population and to renovate a bunch of the buildings. As I'm sure you're aware, there are some plans afoot, maybe turning High Rock into a 5th or 6th rather elementary school, maybe enlarging Pollard to accommodate the 6th graders from High Rock. There's a lot of plans in the works, and truthfully, I don't think that we yet know exactly how that's going to work and what the ultimate plan is going to be. There are folks working on that right now. I do think, though, that the school's opinion is that generally Needham's population is actually leveling out. I personally am concerned that Needham's population is going to grow. One of the things that's happening, not within the schools, but within the town, is that there's a new mandate from the state that is not yet finalized, but does appear to be moving forward, that says that towns with commuter rail or bus service need to do some rezoning around those transit areas to increase the density of housing, to make it accessible to more people, so that we can increase the quantity of our housing, and then in theory, the affordability, just because there will be more. And then of course Needham will maybe have some affordability impositions on that housing. But regardless, this is housing that can't be limited, so that families, for example, with kids, school-age kids, could not move in. So we can anticipate that if some of this housing moves forward, that there will be some increase to the school-age population. And so I think, again, this is just a really complicated question, because up until now, our demographics, and we have a demographer who actually works for the town, has said that our population was going to level out, and this may change things. And so I think the very first step is to figure out what the regulations are going to be, but also to anticipate that we are going to have some increases, and then to say to the school committee, what are we going to do to make sure that the buildings that we're building that aren't due to be finished for many years are going to finish and be accommodating to this increase in student population. So I personally have already said this to a number of the school committee members and to the superintendent. And I know that if you have been watching any of these meetings, it's been a hot topic on the select board and with the planning board, and then also with the school committee. So I'm hoping that there's going to be some way to accommodate some of this potential, but the problem is that right now it really is just potential, and it's hard to anticipate exactly what that rate of growth will be. But it is something that is certainly on the radar, and it's something that I will be talking about pretty consistently. So I think that right now, all we can do is just try to accommodate it.
Okay, so yeah, I think yeah, that's a tough question for you because source like this is type of, it's sort of related to the school committee and also related to the planning board, kind of figure out what's the plan in terms of expanding, either expanding the school or redo some of the to make the space more efficient in terms of like accommodating more students. One of the things I think which is striking is like Polar itself. Polar actually was closed like a couple months ago because they don't have heat, and also they are closed because of the bathroom is clogged. There's no the bathroom is not, it cannot be used. Things like this, and so seems like a Polar, because I asked my kids go to High Rock, and I met a parent whose kid go to Polar, and who just actually goes Polar from High Rock. I've just asked, is a Polar a better place compared to High Rock? And he told me straight in my face, it sucks. So things like this. I mean, maybe exaggerating things a little bit. I don't know exactly what happens, but certain things like this is a Polar. It seems like definitely need some work in the short term in order to catch up with other facilities. So this is something I think it probably also need to kind of look into, and how can make that work better.
Yes, on a personal note, I will say that my kids went to Mitchell, which is, it's kind of sweetly dumpy. Let's just put it that way. And then they went to High Rock, and then they went back to Pollard, and they both said they were really glad to be back at Pollard, because Pollard and Mitchell are both like, comfy old shoes. It's true. They have some deficiencies, but they are totally functional. Particularly, I think Pollard has had a number of updates over the years to try and keep it that way. But there's no question that they both need work and renovation.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks. Appreciate that. I think okay. So I think maybe next question we can go through is about affordable housing, like fair housing, affordability, etc. in Needham. So what's your perspective on that?
Well, we need more housing. I mean, the entire region is having a huge housing shortage. So it's not just Needham. And I don't think that it's something that Needham can solve on its own. But I do believe that Needham can make a start, right? So we've already done a bunch of larger developments that are a little bit further away from the center of town. And while those are good developments, and a lot of people like those, and they are full, it would be my preference to see something more like the MBTA transit-oriented housing, which is coming up, which is to build, mixed use apartments, condos, townhouses closer to transit centers, so that I think it creates kind of a more walkable, more community feel. My concern about like Kendrick and the Modera apartments is that they're very far away from everything, and it makes them feel a little bit like they're outside the community. And I would rather have different types of housing that are within sort of the walkable community, so that people could feel a little bit more engaged. As far as affordable housing, within that housing, I think we need to have some units that are sort of affordable, that are there are a bunch of different terms that are all called affordable that mean very different things. So when you talk about really deeply affordable, you're maybe talking about the Needham Housing Authority that has subsidized housing, that has housing for people who are making considerably less than the average. And then when you're talking about these developments, new housing, you could have a certain number of them that are less expensive, that are sort of a greater portion of the average salary. So I think it's going to take a combination of a lot of different tools to make more housing, more diverse housing, and more affordable housing. Another thing I'd like to see is having accessory dwelling units be less restricted in the neighborhoods, so that people could rent out their outbuildings as apartments or studios or what have you, to people who would prefer that sort of housing, so that they could be within a neighborhood. And whether that's a senior moving out of their house and into their accessory dwelling unit, or having someone move into their backyard, say, and have a little source of extra income, I think that would be helpful as well. Basically, I think you have to sort of attack this problem from all angles. There isn't going to be one magic bullet that fixes all the problems that I see.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a naturally move us to the next one. So I think there's a question in the chat box. So regarding about the property tax in Needham, it's a sort of long, but I would just kind of extract the main points. So basically, the property tax increased significantly over past 4 years, putting Needham higher in a higher bracket in terms of property tax compared with Newton and Wellesley. I mean, from your perspective as town meeting members, right? And do you think what's your perspective in terms of justifying the higher property tax now, and what's your forecast going forward? Is it going to continue to increase, or what?
Well, I think the reason that we have a high property tax right now is because we've done a lot of capital projects that need to be paid for out of the tax levy. And we just had an override for the fire station and police buildings. So the impact of that is in our tax bill. So I think that, yes, we can expect this to continue. Unfortunately, not only have those projects not been, paid off, so that they're still impacting us, but we also have these massive school renovations that we've been talking about, Pollard and Mitchell renovations, and then perhaps some edits to High Rock. So I think it's unlikely that our taxes are going to go down anytime soon. I do think that a way to offset this is to really give a lot of thought to what kind of commercial development, whether that's like strictly commercial development, like we see the Muzzy site is going to be mostly commercial, or mixed use development, and then the creation of this extra housing that can help to share some of these burdens.
Well, as far as I can see, the capital projects will keep it coming up, right? So because now we have this makeover of like fire stations and police stations, which is got down, which is great. And then we need more budget for the school. I thought the school budget goes up, right? So it's because of the requiring expansion of the facilities, recruiting more people, and all that. And the budget is up. Also, like basically requiring more asset resource allocation from the town in general. So
yeah, I think a lot of those positions though were just open. I mean, I think a lot of those positions, I know that they did request a lot of new positions in the school budget.
Yeah,
some of those were just unfilled positions that have been there for a very long time, and not necessarily additional. But I agree. I think that the challenge is that we want our kids to be well served in the schools. We want them to have the academic supports and the mental health supports and the social supports that they need. But how do we do that without, paying for it? It's a very hard calculus to make. And no, I mean, I hear you. I've been living here for 18 years. My taxes have gone like crazy. But at the same time, we've redone like every single building in town, and that has a cost. So hopefully we're coming to more or less the end of this rebuilding cycle, and we have to just continue to make smart decisions.
I think one of the things I think is like not just redown the building as it is, right? So it's like you need to think about how to make it more functional and be beneficial to the town in general. so that to meet the increasing demand for, because Needham itself is a residential town and with a lot of focus on education, right, and family values. So things like that. So we do, if you look at the map of the property in Needham, I think that the town itself own a lot of properties in the town too. And road space should be, can be better used, to be honest. It's like if that's like turning into a more functional space instead of just being an office space, right? So things like that. I think that this is definitely something I want to pass the message to the town or select board to in the future. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So I think one more question is, do you want to talk a little bit about diversity? Because the town itself is, I think there's been discussions regarding minorities related to diversity in terms of the the population like breakdown, etc. Do you want to share your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, my perspective is pretty simple, to be honest. I think more diversity makes a better town. I think the more perspectives we have, the more input we have from more people, the better off we're going to be. The challenge, I think, is how to do that and how to reach people. I mean, aside from the fact that everyone has a very busy life and that, like not everyone has time to participate in all of the various meetings and what have you that's going on. I think, it's a challenge to get people engaged. I would love to see more people, for example, running for office or even like challenging me for this position. And we don't have that. A lot of our volunteer positions in town call for a very large commitment. And it's hard for people, especially people with kids and jobs, to do that. And I think that, I would love to find a way to facilitate getting people's foot in the door so that they can have the conversations that lead to the outcomes that we all want, or at least that I would like to see. And so if anyone has any suggestions, I would love to take them. But yeah, I mean, it's upsetting to me. I think that it's not good for anyone to miss the perspectives of others. And that holds true for, my white kids in school. Like they miss out when they don't have schoolmates and friends and the kids on their sports teams or wherever they come into contact with people. If they're only looking at kids who look like them, they miss out. So I would love to find a way to spread the message that Needham is a welcoming community and to make that the truth. And as I said, like, please, if you have any suggestions about how to get people involved, please share them.
Okay, great. Yeah, sounds great. I think that there's one more thing I want to touch on, but I have not, which is because you are a healthcare, you're working in healthcare industry, right? Mm-hmm. So I think Needham becomes a more and more important, like a focused on healthcare too, because earlier the year, like Boston Children's Hospital gonna have a sort of a facility here in Needham. Yes. So I see more healthcare kind of provider come to Needham, and also I saw a lot of new branches of banks open up in Needham too. Yeah. So yeah, from your perspective, it's like going forward, do you see Needham will becoming a hub of a healthcare, like hospital stuff, like going forward? When do you know
that's
why?
An interesting question. I hadn't really thought of it that way before. Certainly there are a lot of practices here. Just like for every industry, Needham is at this fantastic crossroads of, transit, right? So there's so many ways to get here, and we're in the middle of so many communities. Yeah, I mean, I guess you're kind of right. I mean, I work in Newton, but just steps from Needham. at a healthcare facility.
right.
And then, of course, there's the new children's hospital that's coming in, and of course, Beth Israel Hospital. But you're right, there are tons of practices. I don't know. I would not mind seeing that. I think it's a good thing. And if Needham can play host to healthcare among other industries, I think that certainly is beneficial.
I see. I think I have one last question. Here is Needham is a sort of the location is a sort of special, cutting in the middle between Newton and Wellesley, right? Comparing to the neighboring towns, what key advantage do you think Needham has, like being unique compared with the neighboring towns? Let's say Wellesley, Newton, and Dayton, for example. Like, do you see anything special about Needham?
Yeah, well, yes, I do see lots of, things that are special about Needham. I actually grew up in Newton, and I find that even though we're neighbors, we don't really have, these are two very different towns. Newton is a very large city, and
Yeah.
Needham is still kind of a small town. I think we like to think of ourselves as a small town, but we're actually pretty cosmopolitan. One of the things that I personally have noticed about Needham is that, first of all, folks are very active. There are a lot of professionals, but that when they're in town, they're very active, very actively involved in their kids' lives, and they're very physically active, more so than any place else that I have ever seen, which was actually one of the reasons that we wanted to live here. Is like people are out and about. They're not hanging out at their home. They are out in the community. And I think that's one of the things that makes it really special.
Okay, sounds good. I share the same. I feel the same, because of the first time when I come to look for a house in the neighborhood, I went to Westwood first, and then after seeing the houses in Needham, and we decided to move Needham like right away. So it's sort of a little different from others, but definitely it's a town, like a welcoming town. Like you will love this place, especially after you move here. But thank you very much for your time tonight. And I think this is a great discussion. I'll be very happy to share this with our community afterwards once we upload the video. I'm sure you're going to be you'll be great as a new select board member. And we love to work with you down the road too.
Great. Well, thank you. It's such a pleasure to talk.
Same here. Thank you everyone for coming, for being on this meeting tonight, and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. So bye now.
Bye-bye.